guys, welcome back to the vlog. I'm sitting in a weird position. This is like really comfortable for me. So I'm not in my usual filming location because I am on the beautiful sunny Gold Coast here in Australia. I had planned to be in Australia these couple of weeks because my sister got married last week. And then I just saw that the WPT Prime on the Gold Coast was happening at the same time. So I'm here playing that for a few days, but not the main event. I couldn't take enough time off work to play that, but I played some side events, and there will be, sorry, this chair is spinning. There will be a future vlog on that, but in this vlog I wanted to cover most of February. As I mentioned, my mom was here for a month, so I took her to a bunch of new places as well as some of my favorites, and also played some poker in between. There was one weekend where she was on a 3-day trip across Zion, Grand Canyon and other places, so I had some time to play in between, so stay tuned for some action as well. But yeah, let's get into it.
Hey, remember when we were kids and mom wouldn't let us go for the pizza or the french fries because that just takes up space and it has very low monetary value? Well, this is my plate and this is her plate. Look. These are my favorite. I got a hodgepodge of things. That's salty amongst all the sweet things. And some soup. The buffet is so smart. They're so worried about people overloading their plates with dessert that they put them in these massive trays, so I could only fit 2 at a time. I had to like carry this in my other hand. So that's how much I got in one trip. Better than burning myself at Korean barbecue. I think this is like my 12th dessert.
In the first notable hand of the session, it looks like Under the Gun has limped, Hijack has made it 50, and now we have somehow decided to 3-bet this to 150 with Jack 9 of clubs. Button calls, the limper calls, and the hijack calls as well. And we go 4-way to a flop of 10, 4, 5, 2 clubs. Now we've made it this far, so we are certainly c-betting this. When it checks to us, we fire out 300, and luckily that just about gets the job done. Thank God. Next up, we have pocket 5s in the hijack. We open it up and button decides to come along, so we are heads up to a flop of 9, 8, 6, 2 clubs. I think this is a board we can c-bet, so we decide to throw out a bet of 40 and button decides to stick around. The turn is the ace of spades, and now we go for a bet of 150. Honestly, looking back, I'm not loving this. At the time, I was thinking ace hits a decent amount of our range, and it's kind of like a weird mergy spot where you may get called by some club draws and straight draws, which we are beating, and also get some hands like single pair hands with an 8 or a 6 to fold. But honestly, looking back, not sure I love this. Anyhow, our bet of 150 goes uncalled as the button folds, so it seems like our bluffs are getting through today, which is good. Next up, we have Queen Jack of Hearts in the cutoff. We raise it up to 30 and the big blind decides to call. The flop is King 10 3, 2 clubs, There's also the king of hearts to give us backdoor flush possibilities, big blind checks, and of course we want to c-bet this, so we throw out a bet of 40 and big blind calls. The turn is the queen of clubs, bringing in the flush and also giving us a pair to go along with our straight draw that may or may not be good anymore. Big blind checks, and with the flush on the board and a pair, I don't think we accomplish much by betting here. All the hands that beat us will call, and most of the hands that we beat will probably fold, so we decide to check back, and we see the river of the 9 of spades, which is kind of tricky now if big blind decides to bet big. Is our straight good? Is it not? And even if he checks, should we be betting this? I think we would certainly go for some value, actually. Anyway, big blind now decides to lead out for 40, and I mean, I think raising might be okay, but I think against most opponents, it's probably better to just call. I'm not sure if any of the hands we are beating really call a river raise, so we decide to just call, and we see that we are good against ace queen. Next up, we are under the gun with pocket queens. We open it up to 30, cutoff calls the 30, and now the button decides to raise it up to 150. Out of position, I think queens is better as a 4-bet rather than calling, so we decide to make it 450. Cutoff gets out of the way, and button, after tanking for quite some time, decides to make the call. The flop is ace 8-5 rainbow. Obviously not the best flop for queens as there is an ace on the board, but in any case we decide to c-bet 300. And again, I'm not loving this now that I'm watching it, but I'm thinking we can still get calls from jacks, 10s, maybe 9s. The button calls and the turn comes the 6 of spades. So I think we want to play a bit defensive here. I'm not really sure what betting queens is going to accomplish, so hopefully I am balanced enough to be checking some aces here as well. And so I check, and now button decides to go for a bet of 550, which is about 1/3 pot. So I'm thinking here that there are not many hands that button should be betting here. I think a lot of the aces that button would have probably elect to check here unless it's specifically ace king or ace 8, ace 5 suited maybe. And I don't think that button should have many straights or sets here unless it's maybe pocket aces. But anyhow, I decide to call. I know this is a little bit dicey here. Anyway, we see the river, which is a repeat 6. I check, and this time button decides to check back, and we see that queens are good. In this hand, we are in the big blind with pocket 4s. Hijack opens it up to 30 and we decide to just call. The flop is 8-6-4, all spades. I check and our opponent checks behind. The turn is the jack of spades. We check again and now hijack bets out $30. Obviously, we have to call this. It's a relatively small bet, giving us good odds to hit a full house on the river and win versus a flush. The river now comes the 10 of spades. With 5 spades on the board, our pocket 4s are now worth nothing. I think this is a spot where we can try and steal the pot. So we throw out a bet of $100. He lays it down and we are more than happy to show that we did get a little bit naughty here. In the last notable hand of the session, we have king 4 of spades on the button. Hijack opens it to 30 and we decide to call. Small blind calls as well, and the flop comes 9-9-7 with 2 spades. It checks to me and we throw out a bet of 30 with the king high flush draw. Small blind calls, but the hijack now raises to 120. This is getting a little dicey, but obviously we're not going anywhere with the second nut flush draw, so we make the call and the small blind folds. The turn is the 3 of spades, so we get there immediately. The hijack now bets 230, so we're feeling pretty good about our flush, but obviously can't discount ace high flushes and maybe some boats, so we decide to just call the 230 at this point. The river is an offsuit 4, and now hijack goes for a bigger bet of 450, which we are not loving considering he has taken a pretty strong line of check raising the flop, betting turn, and then betting river, and he looks like a recreational player, so it's not one of these super pros that think that they can go for thin value or bluff with a ace of spades blocker. Against those, it's pretty much a straightforward call, but for this price, I don't give it too much thought. I flick in the call. If he's got it, he's got got it. Sure enough, he turns over the ace of spades with a 9 of hearts. So he had a hand where he felt it was pretty safe to value bet his trips, considering he has the ace of spades, which makes it less likely that I have flushes. So in a way, I kind of got lucky that he had that specific holding, allowing me to get more value despite getting reverse slow rolled a bit, seeing the ace of spades first. But we take this one down. In the second session of the week, we pick up pocket tens, under the gun +1. We open it up to 30, small blind 3 bets to 120, and now big blind 4 bets to 350, which is pretty freaking strong. So I think with the players still to act behind, tens is in a bit of a rough spot. So I decided to let this one go, especially because big blind is a solid reg, and I think if I'm in a tough spot pre-flop, usually I look at who my main opponent is going to be, and if they're solid, then I tend to want to avoid battling against them. I think it's just good for my win rate in the long run. In the very next hand, we pick up pocket tens again. We raise it up to 30 and it folds around to the small blind who calls. Big blind decides to come along as well. The flop is 7-6-3 rainbow, which is a pretty good flop for tens, obviously with no cards higher than our pockets. It checks to us and we see bet 40. Small blind thinks for a while, then makes the call, while the big blind decides to let it go. The turn is not so great of a card for us. It's the king of clubs, but when you really think about it, small blind probably doesn't have that many kings in their range that would have called the flop, unless it was one of the other 2 backdoor flush draws that's not a club, which I guess is just a small portion of their range. So when they decide to check, we check back as well for some pot control. The river comes a 3 of diamonds, which is a pretty safe card for us. Small blind decides to bet out 180, pretty much the size of the pot. We don't think about it for too long and make the call. My main thought process was that they don't have kings that often. There also aren't a lot of 3s that would want to call from the small blind. I mean, they could have full houses, but based on the way it was played, I think there are enough bluffs where this is a pretty easy call. I mean, I could be wrong. But anyway, in this case, the call is correct as small blind turns over ace queen and we take it down. So this hand is a bit of a spicy one. We have 8-9 offsuit in the big blind. Hijack opens to 30, small blind calls, and we decide to come along as well. The flop comes jack 10-3. All diamonds, small blind checks, we check, and the hijack fires out 60, which is kind of a big bet. The small blind decides to fold, and now we're in a bit of a tricky spot. Yes, we do have a straight draw, but we're not sure if it's good considering our opponent could have a flush, and 2 of the outs that give us a straight could also give him a better flush. We do have the 9 of diamonds, I guess, making it a little less likely that hijack has a flush right now. So instead of calling, I decide to raise here. I thought it couldn't be that bad because if we get shoved on, we can just fold. We're not giving up that much equity. And I also just thought if I could get anything to fold, that's a win because we have 9 high. So I decide to raise. Unfortunately, he calls and now we see a turn, which is the 4 of diamonds. We're kind of in no man's land, not really sure whether this is good or bad for us. So we decide to check and now he fires 270. We're not going anywhere just yet with our flush, so we call and see a river of the 6 of diamonds. Still not sure exactly where we are in this hand, so we decide to check again. Now hijack decides to bet 500. Now I don't think a call is good, so I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking, how often does this guy have the ace of diamonds that would play it this way? Thinking back, he probably has an ace of diamonds a ton and I should have just folded. But in the moment, I thought he has about 1200 behind, so I think he still has fold equity if he doesn't have the ace of diamonds. So I decided to just rip it, and now he is tanking, which is great. So we're just sitting here thinking, okay, he's got the queen or the king of diamonds, he's tanking, and eventually he calls. So obviously we're dead. We turn over our cards. He turns over his cards and he has the ace 10 with the ace of diamonds. So the ace of diamonds isn't the nuts. Yes, it's true that 7-5 of diamonds is a straight flush, I didn't think he was slow rolling, but the table was outraged that he took so long. I guess maybe the river check raise is a pretty underbluff spot, so, you know, maybe he thinks it can really only be the nuts. I don't know if it was a slow roll. Drop it in the comments if you think it was a slow roll or not. Honestly, this hand by me was a mega punt, I will admit. The flop raise was actually okay. I checked this on the solver, of course. The bet size and the position isn't exact, and especially because it's three-way, but 9-8 does raise a decent amount, and I guess my thinking around getting anything to fold was kind of okay logic. The turn call was fine as well. It's just that the problem with the river is that our opponent doesn't really have a capped range here. He does have a lot of ace of diamonds, so jamming is really not good. In fact, if you look at what hands can jam from our position, it's only ace-7 suited and ace-5 suited. I can't even jam ace-9 or ace-deuce suited because our opponent might have 7-5 diamonds. So personally, I don't think my opponent was slow rolling. Did he have to take 3 minutes? No, but there was a real concern of me having 7-5 suited, so without having the 7 or the 5 of diamonds in this hand, I can understand why he took some time to call.
Okay, we interrupt this programming. Can we just acknowledge that some men and some women, some people, just have zero EQ? Like, after that slow roll / not slow roll hand happened, the guy to my left immediately tries to talk strat with me and is like, well, you know, amateurs would check back there on the river, so he's calling everything. Anyway, strat aside, I didn't give that much of a reaction because, frankly, I'm Steven. I'm literally going to the cage to get more money. This is not the moment to talk to me about how he's not folding anything, he's betting on the river. It was a perfect time to leave the table, so I go get more chips, come back, and he keeps going. You know, well, that's just my opinion. I'm like, bro, give me a minute. Give me a minute. Anyway, I don't know if this will make it into the vlog, but this is just a bit of my in the moment reaction to people trying to talk to me about where I went wrong. Like, I really loved this one way of thinking that Doug Polk had in his latest video, which was, in the moment, you want to be confident in your decision, and then afterwards, maybe more than 30 seconds afterwards, like, give me a minute, you want to go back and look at the spot and see if there were better ways of playing it. And certainly that's one spot where I will look at. Oh my god, I'm so mad. Anyway, all right, we're good. We're good. We're going back.
Alright, shake it off. In the next hand, after we get back to the table, we are in the hijack with ace-king off. Low jack opens to 30 and we make it 90. It folds around to the big blind, who then makes it 280. Low jack gets out of the way, and obviously we are not going anywhere. The question is whether to raise again or just call. I think an ace-king off in this spot plays better as a call, so we do just that, and we see a flop of ace, queen, jack, rainbow. Big blind decides to bet 150, and we're not loving the spot simply because big blind could have a bunch of 2-pair and sets with this very Broadway board. I mean, the board really just favors his range a lot. In fact, I think ace-king is probably close to the bottom of his value range on this board. Anyhow, we decide to call, and we see a beautiful turn, which is the 10 of hearts. Big blind now decides to bet out 250, and we're thinking, how do we get more value from this hand? My thinking here was just that we have the nuts right now. It would be a total action killer if the board paired, which would not only give the big blind a lot of boats, but also an incredible bluff opportunity. I figure it was better to just get it in now. And the other thing on my mind was that I had just punted off almost an entire stack with a 9 high flush against the effective nuts. So I feel like maybe there's this dynamic where he could think I'm steaming a little bit and decide to call me with 2-pair or any kind of bluff catcher. Although now thinking back, those hands may elect to check on this turn. Anyhow, I decide to rip it in and big blind snaps me off and we see that we are chopping with ace king. So a bit of an anticlimactic end to that hand. In the last notable hand of the session, we have king 8 suited in the low jack. We raise it up to 30 and cutoff is the only play that called. So we are heads up to a flop of queen 8-3. We check out of position, not exactly how best to play this, but I decided to check and he bets out 30 and now we have an easy call. The turn brings a 9 and we decide to check again, no real reason to bet here. And now he decides to bet 90, which, I mean, he could have a bunch of value hands like king queen, queen 8 suited, queen 9 suited, but he could also have a bunch of bluffs like king jack, king 10, those kinds of hands that turn some equity with the 9 on the turn. And he could also have bet a hand like 4s through 7s on the flop and has now decided to bluff. Not entirely sure, but I thought it was worth calling one more street, so I do just that. And the river comes a repeat 9. We check again, and at this point he checks behind. We reveal our hand, and it turns out king 8 is good.
Inner plans.
Is there anything better than getting home and you've got food, you're about to watch some trashy TV? In fact, it's so trashy, I'm not even going to tell you what it is. Okay, it's 90 Day Fiancé. It's 90 Day Fiancé, the last resort.
This, from the drive home, it was a 12-minute drive, and it's all come together. The chips taste like, I mean the fries, as you call them, taste like cardboard. P. Terry's is better.